Some people don't like the spotlight. They simply work quietly, live kindly, and believe that's enough to earn respect. Naomi was one of those people. She wasn't anyone special, just a single mother working hard at a small diner on the corner, day after day, without complaint. One rainy afternoon, she handed a stranger a cup of hot tea and a quiet seat. Nothing grand. But the next day she was fired, just for being kind to someone who didn't deserve it. What she didn't know was that small act would change her life and the lives of those around her. Naomi was not someone who liked attention. She worked hard, spoke softly, and never raised her voice or argued. For nearly 2 years, she'd been working at a small eatery called Midtown Diner, tucked into an aging street corner downtown. It wasn't fancy, it didn't stand out, just a steady place to earn a living, where she could save every dollar to raise her 2 school-age children. Naomi had done many jobs: grocery cashier, kitchen helper, and call center operator. She was no stranger to pressure or unfairness. But Midtown Diner felt like a place she could stay for a while. The place opened early and closed late, serving all kinds of customers: laborers, students, elderly folks living alone. Naomi liked that. Each one had a story. She always listened and always smiled. Her rule was simple: do her job well, be kind, and avoid conflict. She never imagined that a single act of kindness could make her a target. That afternoon, the diner was quiet. Outside, a light rain was falling. Naomi was wiping down tables when the door opened, and in came a man in his early 50s, quiet in demeanor. His shirt was worn thin, and he carried a faded canvas bag. He stepped in, glancing around. Despite the rain, no one greeted him. Naomi quickly walked over and handed him a dry napkin to wipe his face. "Hi, sir, would you like a hot tea?" she said gently, and led him to a table by the window. She called him "sir" because he had the look of someone modest and a little worn, the kind who's used to being overlooked. Naomi knew these kinds of customers. Not everyone got a warm welcome, especially in a place where some coworkers like to choose who to smile at and who to ignore. When Naomi brought him his tea, the man smiled faintly. "Thank you," he said. "On a rainy day like this, just having a seat is a blessing." She nodded and walked back to the counter, but soon after she heard whispering behind her. "Probably another old guy who won't pay," muttered Anne, her coworker on the same shift. "Naomi, there you go again, always sticking your nose in." Naomi ignored it. She was used to it. At the diner, Anne and a few others often showed little respect to customers who didn't look profitable. Well-dressed patrons got warm welcomes, while laborers, the elderly, but Naomi couldn't pretend everyone who walked through that door was a person, not just a receipt. When the man ordered, she recommended the cheapest and tastiest option: grilled chicken with rice, the chef's best dish. Before leaving, he left a few crumpled bills and a small note. "Thank you, not everyone treats a stranger with such kindness." Naomi took the note, silently tucking it into her pocket. She had no idea that this small act, on that gently rainy day, was about to spark trouble. The next morning, Naomi was called into the manager's office. She didn't think much of it, maybe a schedule change, she figured. But when she walked in and saw both Anne and manager Tom already seated, she had a feeling something was wrong. Tom didn't waste time. "We've decided to terminate your employment," he said bluntly, "due to improper customer without clear ability to pay and causing internal disruption." Naomi stood frozen. She couldn't respond right away, and sat beside him, arms crossed, a smug look on her face. "You mean the man from last night?" Naomi asked calmly. "He paid properly. I didn't ask anyone for anything." "You didn't follow internal protocol," Tom said firmly. "Here we have a system of priorities." Naomi gave a faint, sad smile. "Priority system? That meant choosing which customers deserved to be served. No one had to say it. Everyone already understood. You can collect this week's pay on Friday afternoon," Tom concluded. "We hope you understand and take this as a lesson." Naomi said nothing. She removed her apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the table. As she walked out, she glanced briefly at not with anger, just an empty, distant look. It was the first time in years that Naomi walked away from a job with nothing in her hands, not just without work, but without justice. What she didn't know was that this day would mark the beginning of an entirely new chapter in her life. Naomi couldn't remember how long she'd been driving after leaving Midtown Diner. Her mind was clouded. Every sound inside the car, the wipers, the horns outside, even her youngest daughter's voice on a voicemail, all felt far away, like echoes from another world. All because of a cup of tea, a kind greeting. She lost her job. She pulled over at the familiar park near home, sat still in the car, hands on the steering wheel, staring blankly ahead. In her head, the same question circled. Where did I go wrong? Should I have just looked the other way like everyone else? Will I even have enough to pay rent this month? She took out her phone and checked her account balance. Nearly empty. Lana's school fees had been partially paid, but bills, groceries, utilities, the car loan, everything was piling up. Naomi wasn't someone who often complained or felt sorry for herself. She had been through tougher times, worked 2 or 3 jobs, hidden her exhaustion behind a smile for her kids. But today felt different. It wasn't just the job she lost, it was her faith. She had believed in doing what was right, that kindness wouldn't leave her empty-handed. And yet it had cost her everything in just one morning. Her phone rang. An unknown number. Naomi hesitated for a few seconds, then answered. A calm, deep male voice came through. Naomi, this is Robert Lamb, the man you served last night at Midtown Diner. Naomi froze. That voice slow, clear, unhurried. The same man from the night before. Yes, I remember, she replied softly, surprised. Is something wrong? I heard you were fired for serving me, he said, getting straight to the point. And I want to tell you something important. You did nothing wrong. You were the only one in that diner who acted right. Naomi gripped her phone tighter, eyes stinging. Thank you, she whispered. But kindness doesn't pay rent. Mr. Robert paused for a moment. I understand completely, and I didn't call just to say thank you. Naomi frowned slightly. Then, what is it? Actually, I'm one of the 3 principal investors in the Midtown chain. I often visit branches unannounced to see how staff behave when they think no one's watching. Naomi was stunned, and I saw enough. No one greeted me, no one offered help. Except you, he continued. You didn't just do your job, you did it with dignity. She couldn't find the words to speak. That's why I'd like to meet you, he continued. There are some major changes I'm about to make, and I need someone like you to carry them out. Naomi swallowed. What exactly are you planning to do? We'll talk more in detail, but in short, I plan to fire the entire management team at the Midtown branch and offer you the role of operations manager, with full authority to hire, train, and rebuild it from the ground up. Naomi let out a laugh, one that came from deep inside her, part disbelief, part emotional release. You're joking, right? Another nod. I'm not Naomi. I don't invest in businesses to watch them become discriminatory and unethical. I invest because I still believe good people exist, and yesterday, you proved that to me. Naomi leaned her head back against the seat, silent for a moment. Just a day ago, she'd been pushed out the door of a diner. Now, she was being invited back, not as a worker but as a leader. You need time to think, I understand, Mr. Lamb added, but I'll wait. Naomi took a deep breath. There's nothing to think about, Mr. Lamb, I accept. But I'm not just coming back to manage. I'm coming back to change the culture of that place. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say, he replied. After the call ended, Naomi sat still, overwhelmed with emotion. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. People like Beth and manager Tom wouldn't go quietly. But this time Naomi wasn't alone. Her kindness had been seen. Doing the right thing isn't cheap. But as it turns out, it's worth more than anything else. Naomi walked into Midtown Diner the next morning at exactly 7:55 a.m. She wore a simple white blouse and dark slacks, and her hair was neatly tied back. Not overly formal, but just enough to make one thing clear. She was no longer just a server. Inside, the atmosphere was no different than usual. Beth was still leaning against the counter, phone in hand. Jason was pouring coffee, chatting with a regular customer and laughing in that same dismissive tone. Neither of them had noticed her yet, but Naomi could feel it. For the first time, she walked into this place without feeling small. A new employee passed by and nodded politely. Naomi smiled and returned the greeting. Then, like a scene paused mid-motion, Beth's eyes drifted over and locked onto her. Her expression changed instantly. "Naomi," Beth dropped her phone, eyes wide. "What are you doing here?" Naomi stepped up to the counter, set down her bag, and replied calmly, "I'm here to work." Jason turned around, hearing the exchange, and frowned. "Work? You got fired, remember?" "Then I guess you two didn't get the latest update," Naomi said, her voice soft but firm. Before anyone could react, the door at the back swung open. Mr. Robert Lamb stepped inside, adjusting his tie, his calm gaze sweeping the room. No one spoke. Everyone recognized him. "Good morning," he said, nodding toward Naomi. "You're early." "Good," Jason stammered. "Wait, you're the guy from last night." "Yes," Mr. Lamb interrupted. "I'm the one she served. I'm also the one you ignored. And I also happen to be the majority investor in Midtown." The room froze. "And just to be clear," Mr. Lamb turned to Naomi, "I'm now officially the new operations manager of this branch. Effective immediately." Beth's eyes widened. Jason went pale. Naomi calmly pulled a few papers from her bag. "Here are the official documents, signed by Mr. Lamb and the executive board. If anyone needs confirmation, I can send you the digital copy." No one said a word. They didn't need to. Their faces said it all. Naomi continued, her voice firm but without bitterness. "I know this might come as a surprise to some, but I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to make things right. No more judging customers by what they wear. No more picking and choosing who deserves to be served. If anyone feels they're not fit for this new direction, you are free to leave. Right now." She looked directly at Beth. "The one is being forced." Beth bit her lip. Jason looked down. A few other staff members began whispering quietly. Naomi glanced at Mr. Lamb. He gave a slight nod as if to say, "Go on." Naomi turned to the staff member near the kitchen. "Benneth, who's leading the breakfast line today?" "It's Tara," he replied, his tone noticeably more relaxed. "Very good. Ask Tara to meet me after the breakfast rush. I want to talk about the menu." She turned to the server team. "I'll be reorganizing the shifts shortly. If anyone has concerns, speak directly to me." And just like that, as if a door had opened, Midtown Diner resumed operations. But nothing felt the same. Some were awkward, some hesitant. But Naomi saw one clear thing. No one openly objected. Midway through the morning, once things had settled down, Beth approached the counter. Her voice was much softer than usual. "Naomi, about yesterday, I didn't think it would go this far." Naomi looked at her, not coldly, not kindly, just clear-eyed. "I didn't think a simple greeting and a cup of tea would cost me my job. But that's exactly what brought me here." Beth looked away. "I just thought you overreacted." Naomi gave a faint smile. "Maybe I did. But if doing the right thing feels like too much, then maybe the old standards were the problem." Beth stayed silent, then walked away. Naomi watched her go, not with triumph, but with clarity. Every step she took today was built on the cost of what she lost yesterday. But it was a price she was willing to pay, because now she could use her position to do what was right. That morning, the atmosphere at Lancaster Grill was just like any other. The soft scent of freshly ground coffee in the air, the clink of spoons in glass mugs echoing from the kitchen, and the gentle hum of the radio in the background. But there was one difference no one noticed right away. Today was the day Naomi returned. She stood at the restaurant's entrance and took a deep breath. The early morning sunlight brushed across her coat, as if gently touching the first page of a new chapter. Yesterday, she was dismissed from this place like an extra. Today, she was back not as a server, but as the one taking the wheel. The door opened with a familiar soft chime. Inside, a few heads turned reflexively and then froze. Beth, pouring coffee for a customer, paused mid-motion when she saw Naomi. Jason, wiping down a nearby table, squinted and glanced at Beth, as if to confirm he wasn't imagining things. Naomi stepped in, calm but not cold. She no longer wore a server's uniform. Her crisp white shirt and deep blue jacket said everything without needing to say a word. She placed her bag on the counter, her eyes sweeping the room. There were no warm greetings from her former coworkers. That was fine. She hadn't come for applause. Beth spoke first, her tone laced with surprise and a hint of mockery. "Back to ask for your job." Naomi looked straight at her, composed. "I'm here to begin my new role," Jason scoffed, manager of the condiment station. Before Naomi could reply, the back office door swung open. Richard Lawson stepped out, dignified in posture, kind in expression. Dressed in a simply tailored suit, crisp and clean, he walked over and stood beside Naomi. "Good morning," he said, voice gentle but clear enough to command the room. "I think it's time we share some important news." Beth and Jason glanced at each other, neither daring to speak. "I'm Richard Lawson, owner of Lancaster Grill," he said, pausing to look around at every face. "And I was the customer here 2 nights ago, the one most of you ignored." The atmosphere dropped. Jason lowered his head slightly. Beth gripped the coffee pot tighter. "But there was one person who didn't. One person who acted exactly the way I expect anyone representing this restaurant to behave. That person is Naomi." He turned to Naomi, eyes full of trust. "Starting today, Naomi will officially take on the role of general manager of Lancaster Grill." A small clatter came from the kitchen. Someone had dropped a spoon. No one in the room spoke, Richard continued. "Tom was let go this morning. Further changes will be shared in the coming days. But let me be clear. Disrespect, discrimination, or laziness will no longer be tolerated here." Beth scoffed. "So now she's our boss." Naomi looked her straight in the eye, not arrogant, just certain. "The boss, I'm here to make sure everyone works fairly and customers are treated with respect." Jason muttered something under his breath, but no one responded. Richard ended the announcement with a nod to Naomi and walked away. No more words were needed. His presence alone had already established a new order. Naomi stood there in the very space where just yesterday she had been cast out. She hadn't yet started her real work, hadn't touched the books or adjusted a single policy. But with her return and the public affirmation from the man at the top, the atmosphere in the restaurant had already shifted. No one dared to look her in the eye, but Naomi knew. Their silence now was louder than the scoffs earlier. Because her return wasn't about reclaiming an old seat. It was about rebuilding the foundation this place had long since lost. Naomi stood inside Tom's old office, now hers, and looked through the foggy glass door out onto the restaurant floor. Everything was familiar, but the feeling was entirely different. The desk, the filing cabinet, the crooked schedule pinned to the wall, all seemed to be watching, waiting to see if she could truly do what both they and she had once doubted. Being a manager wasn't about standing higher, it was about carrying the weight. On her first day, Naomi didn't start with orders. She started by listening. She called people in, one by one or in small groups, not to interrogate, but to ask a single question. "In your opinion, what needs to change to make Lancaster better?" The responses varied. Some were silent, some were guarded, some tested how serious Naomi really was. But then, a few began to speak, and when they saw she wasn't just hearing them but writing things down, asking follow-up questions and thanking them, the atmosphere started to thaw. It was Noah, the quiet dishwasher, who surprised Naomi the most with his comment. "If the shift schedules were fairer, we'd all be less frustrated. Before, only Beth's friends got the good shifts." Naomi nodded, wrote it down. She changed it for real. The shift policy was rewritten based on performance, reliability, and valid personal circumstances. No more favoritism for friends. Next came retraining. Naomi stood in front of the whole team, her voice calm but firm. I don't expect any of us to be perfect, but from now on, anyone who walks into this restaurant, whether a customer, a new hire, a delivery driver, or a stranger, deserves respect. If you don't agree, tell me directly or step away. As expected, Beth didn't quit, but her attitude shifted, not out of conviction, but because the power dynamic had changed. Naomi didn't confront her aggressively, nor did she back down. Every time Beth showed attitude or slacked on service, Naomi would simply say, "Please follow proper procedure." Jason was tougher. He sabotaged quietly, falsifying guest counts and skipping cleaning shifts. Naomi noted everything, but held off. When Jason finally kept a customer waiting long enough to trigger a complaint, she called him into the office. "I know you don't like me, but if this job still matters to you, you need to change. I'm rebuilding this place, and there's no room for anyone dragging it backward." Not a threat, just truth. Jason didn't reply. He just looked down, and the next day he started showing up on time. By the end of the week, the restaurant felt different. The service was less tense. Smiles weren't forced. The menus were redesigned, clean and easy to read. Naomi reconnected with the old suppliers and brought back the quality ingredients that had been cut. She even placed a small sign on the counter. "Your feedback helps us do better. Leave us a note." At first, it was just a few small notes, but then someone wrote, "This is the first time I've seen staff here greet customers with their eyes." Another person added, "Food tastes noticeably better. I hope it's not just temporary." Then, one by one, old regulars started to return. A taxi driver someone Jason had once ignored sat down and said, "I heard there's someone new in charge here." Naomi smiled and replied, "The owner, just someone trying to fix what wasn't right." The man nodded and said, "That's good enough for me." More customers came. Revenue rose slowly but steadily. Inside the restaurant, light laughter returned, not the snide kind, but the kind shared between people genuinely trying to be better day by day. Naomi sat in the office one evening, looking over a simple report. Customer count, positive feedback. Things were far from perfect, but she knew this was a solid beginning. And for the first time in years of working behind the counter, Naomi wasn't just doing a job. She was doing what was right. And she was beginning to see the results. On Monday morning, sunlight angled through the window, casting a soft golden stripe across the freshly cleaned tile floor. Naomi stood behind the counter, hands moving swiftly as she double-checked delivery receipts. The smell of fresh coffee, the gentle clinking of spoons on cups, and forced laughter from the corner. All simple things, but far from ordinary. 3 months ago, this very place was a quiet battlefield, cold, indifferent, unfair. Now, Lancaster Grill wasn't grand, but it was warm. A place people wanted to return to. A place staff came to work not because they had no other choice, but because they felt valued. Naomi still remembered that day vividly, the day she returned as the new manager. The stares, the whispers, but she hadn't bowed her head. She wasn't the type to make speeches or raise her voice. She chose to lead through quiet, consistent action, and let the change speak for itself. Today, when Noah, the former dishwasher, walked up in a new uniform with a freshly printed shift schedule in hand, Naomi smiled. "Congratulations, morning shift lead." Noah blushed and scratched his head. "I'm still not used to it." Naomi smiled softly, her gaze full of trust. "That's okay, everyone has to start somewhere." In the kitchen, the sound of laughter echoed as two cooks completed a beautifully plated meal for a returning guest. At the service counter, someone who used to be reserved now smiled warmly at customers, asking how they liked their previous order. A person at a time, one gesture at a time. It all seemed small, but Naomi knew this was exactly how lasting culture is built. A restaurant that's not just good but also human. Richard Lawson stopped by at noon. As usual, he ordered a chicken salad and sat by the window. This time, he didn't say much. He looked around quietly, rested his hand on his glass of water, and nodded slightly. Much better than the first time I came. Thank you. Naomi didn't get formal. She simply smiled and said, "Thank you for giving me the chance." He shook his head. "I didn't give it. You took it, and you did the right thing." A few minutes later, he left, but on the table was a small card. "A place is led with kindness, profit becomes the result, not the goal." Naomi placed the card in her drawer, not to display but to remember. At the end of the day, Naomi held a brief meeting with the entire staff. No speeches, just one heartfelt reminder to, "I can't do this alone. We changed this restaurant not because I'm the boss, but because everyone chose to change together." There was no loud applause, but every pair of eyes looked at her with the respect that hadn't existed 3 months ago. And that was the greatest reward of all. On the whiteboard in the corner, Naomi added a new line. "At Lancaster Grill, everyone is welcome, and everyone is heard." No frills, no slogans, just enough to remind everyone, from the head chef to the dishwasher, that they have a voice and they belong. Naomi stepped out onto the front porch and watched people passing by. She no longer felt the fear she had on the day she was fired. No more bitterness, no more doubt, only gratitude, because sometimes losing a job is the best thing that can happen. And if you followed Naomi's story this far, maybe you understand too. Doing the right thing isn't easy, but it's always worth it. Kindness isn't a weakness, it's the most resilient form of strength. And anyone, even you, can create change, starting with the smallest actions. 3 months later, the diner where she was once fired is now the place Naomi leads, transforms, and quietly inspires. Not through loud words or authority, but through how she lives, how she listens, and how she stays kind even when no one stands with her. Naomi is no longer the quiet server. She's the one who brought fairness back, restored real smiles, and made people believe a workplace can be kind. You know what? Sometimes doing the right thing might cost you something in the short term. But if you stay true, you'll gain something far greater: respect, trust, and a community willing to grow with you. And if you're feeling discouraged, questioned, just because you chose kindness, remember, kindness isn't nice. It's courage. If this story moved you, hit follow, share it, or leave a comment. Because who knows, you might be the one to write the next story of kindness, right where you are.